Well, welcome once again to another episode of Explore Hardy County, and today I have another great guest with me. We have Sheena VanMeter. She is the Superintendent of Hardy County Schools.
I am.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm
Good.
so really excited about this video because I have a lot of questions.
Well, let's see if I have answers.
Hopefully you have the answer. So
hope
we're going to
so.
start off with probably what I think and what the students probably think is the best news they have ever heard, and that is there is no more mask mandate for schools in Hardy County.
That is correct. We lifted that this past week. It was something that we had been talking about continuously, looking at the pros and cons, trying to figure out what was best for our community, and the board felt that it was time, so we lifted it.
So can you take me behind the scenes of how that all works?
Sure, I will try to do that. So it's not a governor's mandate. So before, if you would remember, I guess the first round of wearing masks and then they were lifted, that was all Governor Justice, and he had taken that upon himself. The second round, it was actually something that local communities decided upon themselves. And the downfall to that was that if you didn't wear masks, there were lots of quarantine guidelines that came into place. So there were two categories you could be in. You could be in the universal mask or the non-universal mask pile. And if you wore masks and had a universal mask policy, you basically were exempt from any type of quarantine. So as a school system, we had missed so much school the prior year. And this time around, here we were starting all over again. We did not have a virtual plan. So when we came back thinking this year would be mask free, and did not have any type of virtual arrangements made. We knew that if students were out of school in quarantine, they would just be missing mass amounts of instruction and be working from home kind of on their own for that period of time, which was, I think, when we started 10 days. I think we were down from the 14 to the 10 when we started, if I'm remembering correctly. So we decided to do, when I say we, meaning the board just generally has discussions, gives their input, and tells me what they prefer I do. And then as the superintendent, I made the call and made the announcement. So we decided to do the mask mandate to prevent having to do mass amounts of quarantine. As the year progressed, things changed. So they would do things like change the amount of quarantine days, or they would give you options like what's in place now, which is if you would have an exposure at school, you would be around somebody who would be positive. If you were wearing the mask, then you didn't have to quarantine. But the newest thing that came out was that if you weren't wearing the mask or you were wearing the mask, then if the person you're around, you could do what's called a test to stay, which means you can actually take a test that day. And if you're negative, if you have COVID and I'm beside of you and I'm considered a close contact, I can take a test. And as long as I'm negative, I do not have to quarantine. I can stay in school. So as long as I'm in school, wearing my mask because I've now been exposed, I'm good for 5 days. I test again on the 5th day, and as long as I'm negative, I can remain in school. That was an option as opposed to having folks have to quarantine. So since the quarantine time lowered and now we had another option, the discussion that the board had most recently was, man, there are a lot of options for parents. So you as a parent could choose to have your child vaccinated. You as a parent could choose to leave a mask on your child. You as a parent could choose to not put a mask on your child, or you could choose to let them test if they're exposed and stay in school, or you could choose to let them quarantine. So we figured at this point, there were just tons of things that parents could do to make the decision for themselves, and we felt like that was the right way to move.
So is there like a downfall to that? Like say I'm unmasked, I'm unvaccinated, and I have to quarantine. You said that there is no virtual, so what happens to that child then?
What happens to that child would be just like what would happen if they would get the flu and miss school for 5 days, or they would have some other illness or injury. They just have to take that work, paper copy, pick it up from the school. They're responsible for taking it home and making it up. A lot less of a downfall than it was when it was 10 days. Yeah. It gets really hard for 10 days for a student
or 14 days, the very
14,
beginning.
which was a real nightmare. Yeah, which is, again, why we had really enforced the mask mandate before. I mean, not only, there's the definite belief that it keeps folks safe and that you have the protection from the mask, and there's all kinds of, beliefs behind that. So you have folks that think, man, that mask really works. You have folks that think the mask is a waste of time. You have folks that think they should be vaccinated. You have folks that think they shouldn't be. And we dealt with all of those things.
So I'm going to go on this and I'm going to play what ifs.
Okay.
Because the Hardy County Health Department has just put out that the cloth masks are 0% effective.
I did see that. Yes.
Yes.
We actually gave our students cloth masks. That's what the National Guard sent us.
Yeah.
That's what we were.
So we're at the point where they're saying surgical or N95
Correct.
are the only ones that work.
Correct.
So my question is, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If they have a cloth mask on, that really doesn't help.
Well, according to that, and I know exactly the statement that the health department put out. Yeah. Here's the thing. This is the worst part about it all is my background's in education. So I've said from the beginning.
So you're not a scientist.
Oh, my gosh. I'm not a scientist. I don't know if the masks work or not. I truly don't. I'm sure depending upon what type of mask, there are different levels of success. But here's the problem we experienced. Whether they were wearing the N95 or the cloth or the paper or, the ones that hang that don't even have a bottom to them or the face shields. Yes, we have a lot of folks that wear face shields. They weren't leaving them on. And so the conversation that I had with the board was, listen, if you believe that masks are effective, we are not wearing them effectively because I had pictures of kindergartners chewing on them. I have a really cute picture of our kindergarten class that has this cute little guy. He's doing his work, but he's got it on his forehead like a little hat. I had another one that, he wears it under the chin. We have kids that are hanging them off their ear. And then you've got kids that have the whole thing in their mouth. And then the teacher says, put the mask back on. And then they pop it back on. Then you've got, spit.
And then touching them.
Yeah, and then they take them off and they trade them and they fling them. And so that was a real big issue. In the beginning, we did a nice job as a school system, I think, of making sure everybody left them on. I mean, the administrators were on top of it. The teachers were on top of it. We were really good about, got to wear your mask. But it's been so long that everybody's just so tired, and right or wrong, we're just not. And I told the board that. I said, we are not doing a good job of making sure they're wearing them. So really what we're doing right now is just like not wearing them. And so if you really believe that we want to find the folks who are positive, then let's test the people who we think are exposed. If, of course, with parent permission, if a parent wants their kid tested, let that person get a test. Then you're really going to get actual information as opposed to the whole assuming that they're not getting it because they're assuming who are wearing a mask.
So you bring up actually a good point, though, is the school has no way of knowing if I'm positive if I choose not to test.
Absolutely. That is correct. Yes. And we used to get a list of another big change that kind of led to this decision was the health department would send us a list of all the positives. So we would get a list of Hardy County students who had gone to, any doctor's office or had self-reported and tested positive. And that helped us really with attendance because we were able to go in and code those kids as COVID positives in our system. And we knew what day they were supposed to come back. Well, the health department stopped doing that because they stopped quarantining. So as they stopped doing their contact tracing, they are no longer quarantining. They no longer send us those positive lists. So now we don't know unless you tell us. So if your kid's out for 5 days, you could send a note and say, Johnny, had diarrhea. Yeah. He's not going to be here for 5 days. Poor Johnny.
Yeah.
We don't know. Or you could send the note and that says he has COVID, which then, allows us to code it that way. Really, in the end, it's a parent note, so it's not much difference on that side of it. Although they are coming back around with those EBT cards, which parents will be given credit for the time their kids are out with COVID for that. But other than that, there's really no difference in an absence. It's still an excused absence.
So let's take it from the teacher aspect then of that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a new guideline then for the teachers if they are, becoming positive or testing positive? Like what happens to them with this situation then?
Same thing.
Yeah,
of course, teachers have to use their own leave. In Hardy County, we did not continue COVID leave. So teachers are to the point now where if they're positive or even if they're quarantined, back when they were quarantined by the health department, they had to use their own leave. So they take their own sick days. We talked about extending COVID leave, but we chose to go with dental and vision coverage for our employees because we thought that's something everybody could benefit from. It's a long-term, kind of forever deal thing. So we spent the money on that instead. And I think folks are generally happy with that. We've had a few people who've had to request days without pay because they've used all their leave for various reasons, taking care of children and such through COVID. But for the most part, I think it's been a win.
Okay. Well, I'm very pleased to hear the news about the mask mandates being lifted there. So
some people are and some people aren't, but I'm glad that we were able to make you happy.
I've always been one of the people who's like, listen, if you want to wear one,
right,
and you believe it works,
absolutely
wear it.
Yes,
just
and
wear it.
We encourage folks if they feel strongly about that to to definitely do
Yeah,
it.
no
do what
shame
works
in
for
it.
your family.
Look, yeah,
Yeah.
wear it. Go ahead.
Lots of options.
Yeah. So I heard something. I didn't hear the whole thing, so I have just part of a question. Maybe you can help.
Okay.
I heard that maybe at one time that there was like some monies if you had mask mandates for the schools. Did I like hear wrong? Did I hear half of a story?
The only thing related to that I can think of would be at one point in time when the federal mask mandate was on the table, there were talks about whether or not our pre-K or our federal programs, we receive federal funding for certain programs such as pre-K, whether or not the employees that work directly with those kids and were funded through that, paid basically their salaries came out of that pot of money, whether or not we would still receive those funds if we did not have a mask mandate. That never came to fruition. So there's actually no truth behind that. We did not, the entire time we were a masked county, we did not receive any funding for that. So that's all I know.
Yeah.
On that.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's why we ask all these questions. So now we're gonna go to an easier topic here because that's that can. I know the whole COVID thing can be very divisive. So we're gonna go on to something that in our county, I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce, and we're seeing a very big lack of people going to trade schools.
Okay.
And the trades we feel are really, really needed.
Definitely.
Is there anything that Hardy County is offering to help with kids with trade schools instead of college? I've always been like this. Listen, I can go to college. I can wrap up tens and tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. Mm-hmm. I can go to a trade school, graduate from Votech, and be working towards my, master electrician or whatever you go into.
Absolutely. We encourage folks to attend South Branch. We're, of course, is a multi-county center. It serves Pendleton, Grant, and Hardy. So we have kids that we encourage to go that route. We have different exploratory things we do through the high school. We encourage kids to go out and take, work studies or internships, and we have classes that they can sign up for at the school that allow them to do that. But definitely something we encourage. Most of our kids attend through South Branch and get their certifications, and it's something that we support. We do have a few programs that we offer in-house. We have a Pro Start program, which is a great, baking, pastries, those types of courses. That's a huge hit. That's extremely well attended.
I guess I'm old school, so I'd kind of almost be like home ec.
We used to have to cook certifications.
Yeah. I remember in home ec, we had to cook a pie or something. And,
you would bake a pie.
Oh, sorry. See,
but yes,
I didn't pass it.
Yeah, you might need to revisit that. You can come down and say hey sometime. But it's a really good program. And it's well attended, and we have a lot of students enrolled in that. And then we also have a really great business program. I should give it credit to Mary Catherine Slack that runs our baking and pastries, our Pro Start program. And then the credit would be given to Jessica Markwood, who runs our business program. And you've probably seen DECA, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to tell you what that stands for, but it's basically the organization that the kids who are in the business program belong to. It's kind of like FFA is to ag, DECA is to business, and they're actually national award winners. Like they're in the top 20 in the country in that program. We have several kids that are competing for some national level awards, and it's really good because it teaches kids everything from public speaking to organizational skills to the presentation skills. They blow my mind every time they come to a board meeting or I get to be a part of something that they do. They run their own business at Moorfield High School. They have the Yellow Jacket Industries. They everything from embroidery programs to they put on presentations. They ran the talent show at Moorfield High School here recently. They do it completely on their own, and they're very impressive. So,
do you see maybe a little bit more of a pickup of kids going that way as opposed to have to go to college? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with college,
right.
But I'm saying you can make a very good career
absolutely
in a trade school coming out.
Absolutely,
very
you
good.
can. I'll tell you what I see. I see kids doing both. So I think the way we have a modified block at Moorfield High School and a 7-period day at East Hardy High School. But because we only require 22 credits to graduate in the state of West Virginia, when you look at how many credits you can have in a year, you can actually really rack up way more than 22.
Okay.
what that allows kids to do is if they want to take the college courses, they can do that, but they can also get a certification and be a completer in one of our CTE programs. So we've really been encouraging kids to do both. So you can take, if you're not sure, you can take college classes, even if you just want to take them, to expand your knowledge, but you can also go into one of these CTE programs. And then if you want to attend South Branch and, go into welding or any of those types of things, you have the opportunity to do that. That way, when you're a senior, you can decide. And even if you choose to go to college, you've got this great background knowledge, because I would love for my husband to be able to, replace my toilet and
so would
fix
my
my
wife.
Leaky pipes.
I had to call my brother to help me with mine.
Okay. That happens a lot of times. Like, it's just good, or to know how to cook and to bake and all those different things. They're just such wonderful skills to have that you don't just have to do that for a career. You can go to college or you can take college courses and also be an amazing plumber with some kind of background knowledge in economics, for example. So it's good to be able to do both.
If you're going to run your own business, having some, monetary background,
absolutely,
would
be a
help.
business completer, and then, have that other skill. So
okay. The next thing is East Hardy. The schools are going through a little bit of a change.
Yes.
And I was told, because I accidentally said it was a consolidation, it is a merger.
It is a merger.
So can you explain a little bit for people that might not know what actually happened?
So a consolidation would be if a school is closing. So we are actually not closing a school at all. Currently, the setup at East Hardy is East Hardy Early Middle, which is a pre-K to 8 school. And then we have East Hardy High School, which is a 9 through 12 school. And what has happened is we are merging the 7th and 8th grade with an already existing school, which makes it a merger, not a consolidation. Nobody's closing. So we have currently, let me back up. 4 years ago, we had 252 students at East Hardy High School 9 through 12. This year, we have 202 students in just 9 through 12. And if we did not do the merger, we would have around 150 in another 5 years. So those numbers just keep dropping. In order to keep East Hardy High School open and justify the teachers that we have there and the programs that we have there, we really need to increase our numbers. So we're making East Hardy Early Middle and Elementary School. It'll be pre-K to 6, and then we'll move those approximately 100 kids this year up to East Hardy High School, which will help keep their numbers high. And when you get to below 200, the state starts looking at closures and consolidations.
Okay,
where we would be consolidating East Hardy High with Moorfield High. And I know that, there's a lot of cultural pride in that school at East Hardy. So we want to sustain that as long as we can. So this will help at least get us,
So basically, it's the model of Petersburg High School and Petersburg Elementary.
Yes, absolutely.
It's that.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're talking about the mass, I don't want to say mass exodus because it might not be, but losing numbers.
Yeah.
Is the cause of that people moving out of the area? Is some of it people choosing to homeschool? Or do we have an idea of where we're losing the people?
Well, we're not losing people. We're actually one of the few counties, I think, met with the county commission last week, and they told me that out of the state, we are one of 5 counties that's actually growing, showing a lot of growth. So Hardy County is booming, and especially on our east side, but the families that are moving in aren't having children. They're older, retired, just not people that are having or bringing children with them. So we actually have lost 103 students from last year to this year. And part of that is definitely homeschool. We lost a lot of kids to homeschool. Some of them because of the mask mandate that I'm hoping will re-enroll now that that's lifted. Some of them just COVID, fear of COVID and what it would do to families. We have a lot of grandparents that are raising children. So, older folks more concerned about how COVID might impact them. And they were... they have their children, their grandchildren. So I think they pulled them out and we're doing the homeschool route to prevent that as well. Other than that, I really don't know. We've actually lost enrollment over the last 6 years. We've had a drop when it comes to students. So I'm not sure where that'll lead for us or what we can do to get kids back. If you know any great families, tell them to have children. I really feel like that's where we are. I don't know what to do about that.
So since we are on the homeschool subject, can you explain if I homeschool my child, which I think most of my viewers know that I do homeschool, Am I allowed to have my child participate in after school activities or during school? Say, like right now, she's in second grade. I think I know how to divide and multiply, which is what we're on now. But when we get to chemistry, geometry, are they allowed to go into the school and help for like those classes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have families who their kids come to school for certain periods. So they're part homeschool and then they actually attend, and they'll attend. You can't, in order to remain a homeschool student by classification. So if it's important to you that your child is classified as a homeschool student, they can't attend more than 50% of our day. So depending upon if it's a 5-period block or a 7-period day, what that looks like, how many classes that equates to. But yes, they can attend less than 50% and they would still be considered a homeschool student, and then they can take classes so that your daughter could come in for chemistry or could PE, whatever, driver's ed. A lot of parents want their kids to have driver's ed, so they could take one or more. And as long as they're enrolled in one course with us, they can actually play a school sport.
Okay, so they could, softball.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Final question. Going back to the hard-hitting questions again. I have heard both sides of the story, but a lot of uproar over CIS, communities in schools.
Yes.
Explain a little bit about it.
Sure.
For someone that might not know what it involves. Do we actually follow the curriculum? If you follow back enough CIS, what it embraces.
Sure,
So kind of let's try to clear it up for everyone that might
Absolutely.
not know or has questions.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say I can only speak to what we do in Hardy County because
This is Explore Hardy
this
County.
Is all I know.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So in Hardy County, we actually became a pilot program for communities and schools. We were in the second round of counties that were added to the mix in the state 4 years ago. I was lucky enough to get to attend the initial training with our newly hired community and schools, which we hire social workers. I guess I should also say it's not required that you hire social workers through the communities and schools funding, but it was something we felt was important because we wanted people trained with specific skills. So when we received our offer, the governor's office actually got a grant through the Benedum Foundation to fund the Communities and Schools program in West Virginia. And his wife took that on as her special project. So that funding came through, was offered to Hardy County. We accepted, went to the initial training, and the training that I attended, which was held in Cabell County, was where it took place in Huntington, was actually completely focused on how you would address needs of kids that come up by using community resources, essentially. It taught the social workers how to work with churches or local organizations such as Boys and Girls Clubs, that type of thing, to provide any resource that a kid may need. Anything from a ride to a doctor's appointment to new clothes, to new glasses, to helping the parents find housing. I mean, pretty much covered any need that student would need, or any need that might come up for that family, actually. So that's how we started in Hardy County. Now, we hired 3 social workers to begin with, and each social worker had 2 schools. So we actually have 6 schools in Hardy County, and so we assigned a social worker to schools. Through that, we had great success. We had students building relationships with an adult who was really listening to their needs. Now, I will say we did that before, but our teachers did that and still do. But this is like that next, if you think of it in tiers, like, a teacher has 25 kids, they build that relationship. But then you've got some kids who need that next tier level of really another level of relationship. And I don't mean to knock parents, but, I think we would be lying if we said everybody parented perfectly or as well as they should. Yeah. And so this next level kind of looked at kids who needed a little more attention that maybe they weren't getting at home, or the family as a whole needed a lot of support and the kid was suffering from that lack of family function. And so that's how we operated it. The funding that we get, and I know there's always a lot of questions about that funding. Again, it came from the Benedum Foundation, which is a very well-known foundation that sponsors lots of things in the state of West Virginia. It all is used to fund our salaries of our employees. So we had the funding for those 3 employees. Now, that was a lie. Let me add this to it. We get about an additional few $1,000s that pays for things such as mileage reimbursement if they're taking kids somewhere, and their computer, their paper, their supplies. That's what that funds. Once we had such great success the first year, they actually came back and said, would you like to add additional folks to your buildings? And we jumped on the opportunity to get 3 more paid for. So they gave us the funding for that. We now have 1 per school. We have 6 total. Okay. We were actually going to fund it ourselves, but it worked out that we got that funding. It's one of those things where if the funding went away tomorrow, I would scrape to make sure that Hardee County Schools could keep those 6 social workers in our schools.
So you had said something about working, though, with people or groups or churches or thing in the community also. Do you have any that you're currently working with in the Hardee County school system?
Yeah, we work with lots of churches. I'm not going to say their names because I'm going to screw them up.
If you forget one,
yes, I don't want to insult anybody. But we do the bags of food that go home weekly with our kids. That's organized through our Communities and Schools program. We have a school who has a food bank and a clothing bank and a toiletry bank that we basically call up a wonderful lady who runs it, and we say, hey, we've got a kid down here whose family needs toilet paper. And she shows up at the school within minutes with toilet paper. We work with them through after-school programs. One of the newest things that we have run through our Communities and Schools, which we're really excited about, is actually a drug rehab and drug prevention program. And we target families who are working with addiction and their children. And so those have been identified to us. And those kids actually are part of an after-school program that we've started, just providing extra support, working with the families and the kids. And we're in our 3rd week, I think, and we started with 6. We grew to 10 the next week, and this week I think we have 19 kids, and we're able to bus them to an off-school site where we feed them, do activities with them, and just work with them to help realize that your mom and dad are struggling with something, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad parents, but we're going to help you and help them through it. And that's been wonderful.
So is there a set curriculum or something that comes with this that has to be taught or you have to follow?
I think that there's curriculum available if you wish to purchase it. We actually don't purchase any of that curriculum, nor do we use it. So the only thing that our ladies would do, and I say ladies because they are all, we have 6 women that are in those positions, but the only thing that they would do in a classroom would be work with the teacher to provide any type of I'm trying to think of a good example. We might lead a group of kids whose parents are incarcerated, for example. So that person would just design their own curriculum and how they work with the kids. We don't use anything provided through Communities and Schools. I'm not sure what other systems do, but we didn't.
So we'll make sure for all the viewers, this is Hardee County Schools that we're talking about. That's what Sheena's speaking on, is what Hardee County Schools do. So we'll make that clear for everyone. Now,
we do have a database that we keep where we just track progress. So if we have a Communities and Schools coordinator, which are our social workers, it's all one and the same, that works with a kid that's constantly tardy, for example, and this student's late, and we know they're late because mom oversleeps because of an addiction problem. We track that we're working with that kid in the system and what resources we're using, what community organizations we're using, the things that we've tried that have worked. And our goal is to hopefully get that kid where they're not as dependent upon that social worker and can go out and learn those skills to progress on their own. But other than that, that's really all we use of Communities and Schools.
Okay. So final question, and this will be the easiest one of all of them. Is there anything that is new, happening, exciting, something that you can think of that you want people to know about?
Really? We're in school consistently, and we're seeing a future that maybe isn't as consumed with COVID. And I think that's probably the best thing that I can say. It's been a rough few years. We joke that I haven't had a normal year since I became superintendent. This is my 5th year, and I started with teacher strikes 2 years in a row, and then COVID immediately thereafter. And somebody said the other day, I bet we're going to have a flood or something.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, so,
please.
knock on wood. Just a normal year would be lovely, and I can see that, I think, in the future. But our kids are doing well. Kids are so resilient, and I've said several times, kids haven't been suffering from this pandemic. They've really been surviving it. And if you think of the stories that they're going to have to tell when they're adults that they can talk about with their kids of all the crazy stuff that happened in their school, and they're still going to be successful because they're resilient. But other than that, no, everything's gone great.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Sheena, thank you very much for taking the time. I know your schedule is really busy, but we appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
Explore Hardy County. We now have YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. You'll be able to catch this interview this evening as soon as I set the music and logos to it. So follow, subscribe. We'll have more videos coming your way. Thank you, everyone.